My stepmother Veronica thought she'd sealed the deal when she stood at my divorce party, raised her champagne glass, and announced to 40 relatives that I was just another man who couldn't satisfy a woman. She didn't know my 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, had been recording her for weeks. The gathering was meant to be low-key, beer and barbecue in the backyard, but Veronica turned it into her victory lap. She wore the designer dress she'd bought with my father's credit card last month, and treated the room like an audience for a lecture on why I was destined to fail at marriage. "Some people just don't have what it takes," she declared loudly. "Poor Garrett here. Bless him, he tried so hard to be something he's not." I sat on my father's worn leather couch with Hazel pressed against me, her small fingers around her tablet. She watched Veronica with the same sharp green eyes she'd inherited from her mother, eyes that seemed to notice everything and forget nothing. At 8, she understood more than most adults gave her credit for, including the fact that Grandma Veronica was only my father's wife of 7 years and not really her grandmother, and that she'd made life uncomfortable for us since she moved in. I'm Garrett. 2 weeks ago I became another divorce statistic. 34, software engineer, father to one brilliant little girl, and according to my stepmother, a failure at being a man. The divorce itself wasn't dramatic. Brooke and I had drifted apart and wanted different lives. We signed papers like adults, arranged custody respectfully, and moved forward. But Veronica couldn't accept a quiet ending. She needed it to be my fault. An indictment of my character. My father Dennis sat in his recliner, staring into his beer. A retired contractor of 58 with hands that built half the neighborhood, he grew small and silent around Veronica. He wouldn't meet my eyes while she dismantled my reputation in front of family. "You know what they say," Veronica went on, waving her champagne flute like a baton. "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Dennis's brother couldn't keep a woman either. Must be something in the family DNA." Aunt Ruth shifted uneasily, but nodded. Uncle Pete muttered something to his wife. My brother Trent kept trying to make eye contact, probably checking if I was okay, but I couldn't stop watching Veronica pull my life apart, piece by piece. Hazel tilted her tablet away from anyone who might peek. She'd been quiet all evening, not out of shyness, but because she is an observer, a documenter. Her third-grade teacher even called her remarkably perceptive at our last conference. If only that teacher could see what Hazel had been observing here. The room was full of people who'd known me my whole life. Those who'd celebrated my graduation, my wedding, the birth of my daughter. Tonight they were an audience to Veronica's one-woman show about why Garrett Morrison would disappoint every woman he met. The papers had been signed 2 weeks earlier in a conference room that smelled of coffee and toner. Brooke and I sat opposite each other at a long mahogany table with our lawyers beside us. No yelling, no accusations, just two people acknowledging that we'd built something better as co-parents than as spouses. "I want you to know I don't regret it," Brooke said after she signed. "We gave each other Hazel and that's worth everything." I nodded, my voice caught. We'd been together 12 years, married 10. Over time we'd become roommates, who shared a daughter. She wanted adventure and a career shift. I wanted stability and routine. Neither choice was wrong. We were simply wrong for each other. Moving back to my childhood home made sense financially. The housing market was insane, and I needed time to find the right place for Hazel and me. Somewhere with good schools and a backyard for her soccer practice. My father offered the guest room without question. As we carried boxes through the narrow hallway, I told him, "This is temporary, Dad. 3 months tops." He replied, "Take all the time you need, son." But his voice carried the heavy concern of a parent watching a child's life change, even if the change was necessary. Veronica had been circling since day one. Perfectly manicured nails tapping every surface, thinly veiled barbs delivered with a smile. She'd been married to Dad 7 years and had redecorated the house into a glossy showcase. My mother's quilts and family photos replaced by abstract art and coordinated throw pillows no one was supposed to use. My mother died when I was 22 after a fast fight with pancreatic cancer, leaving my father lost. He met Veronica at a grief group. She claimed to be mourning her second husband. Within 6 months she moved in. Within a year they were married. My siblings and I tried to be happy for him, but Veronica made it hard. She had a knack for saying cruel things while smiling, for making you doubt whether you'd heard correctly. On my first night back, she announced at dinner, as if comparing my divorce to teenage rejection. Garrett's back home just like when he was 16 and got rejected by the Patterson girl. Some men just aren't meant for commitment. Dennis, pass the salt. My brother Trent had suggested the family gathering as support. You need people who love you, he'd said. Let us remind you you're not alone. My sister Melody organized it. She's the family coordinator who remembers birthdays and plans holidays. She promised something casual: food, drinks, laughs. Veronica had other ideas. She insisted on catering, the good china, and inviting extended family I hadn't seen in years. The casual event became what she called a transition celebration, her euphemism for a party to mark my supposed failure. Relatives shuffled plates and made small talk that danced around the obvious. Uncle Pete on the weather, Cousin Jerome on baseball stats, Aunt Doe complimenting the catering. Everyone pretended normalcy, while the room felt like a play where no one knew their lines. Hazel had been with me since Tuesday under our custody agreement. Tablet, stuffed unicorn Professor Sparkles, and her knack for straight questions that make adults uncomfortable. That afternoon she'd asked Veronica why she dyed her hair if she was proud of aging. Veronica's face had gone through 3 shades of red before she forced a smile. Now Veronica held court by the fireplace, the light on her diamond earrings chosen for effect. She punctuated insults with her champagne glass. "Oh, Garrett, maybe you'll find someone more compatible next time," she said in that false sweet tone. "Someone who appreciates a quieter lifestyle, someone who doesn't need so much excitement and passion." She emphasized those last words as if they were foreign to me, implying I was emotionally stunted. The room shifted. Jerome suddenly became absorbed in his phone. Melody clenched her jaw, but stayed quiet, trying to keep the peace. Brooke, who always seemed to dream big, was used as an example. Aunt Ruth joined in. "Sometimes that doesn't mesh well with someone who prefers to stay in their comfort zone," she offered. "What comfort zone?" I asked, feeling heat rise. "I work 60 hours a week. I coach Hazel's soccer team. I rebuilt Dad's deck last summer. Which of those screams comfort zone?" Veronica laughed, that tinkling, practiced laugh. "We're not talking physical activity. We're talking emotional availability. That special something that makes a woman feel alive." Brooke needed someone who matched her energy and vibrancy. I pointed out she barely knew Brooke, who came to maybe 3 family dinners in 2 years. "Exactly," Veronica said, as if that proved her point. Brooke had pulled away, and that must mean dissatisfaction with her husband. Uncle Pete nodded like it was wisdom rather than manipulation. "Women have intuition about these things," he said. I tried to keep my voice even. "We wanted different things." "That's not a failure, it's life." Veronica dismissed that. "That's what people say when they can't admit the truth." Then she lied about what Brooke supposedly told her at last year's Christmas party, that Brooke felt suffocated by routine and needed excitement. It was fiction. Brooke had spent 5 minutes at that party before leaving with a migraine. Yet the room ate it up. Aunt Doe nodded. Dad's golf buddy muttered something about keeping the spark alive. Veronica warmed to her theme. "Some men have it, and some don't. It's not something you can learn. Either you can satisfy a woman's needs, or you can't." The implications smoked through the room. Several relatives shifted, but nobody defended me. My father, silent until then, muttered into his beer, "Sometimes these things run in families." He cited my brother Carl's failed marriages, as if that made me genetically predisposed to fail. "Some men are built for marriage. Some aren't. Better to know early," Melody protested. But Dad doubled down. Veronica laughed, genuine, ugly triumph. "He could never satisfy a real woman," she said. "These modern sensitive types think feelings are enough. Newsflash, women need more than conversation and help with the dishes." My hands shook. Hazel must have felt it. She scooted closer and found my hand under the table. Her tablet was on her knee, screen angled so I couldn't see. Veronica gestured at me, treating me like an exhibit. 34, living in his father's guest room, sharing custody of a daughter who probably wondered why mommy stopped loving daddy. Then my father delivered the final blow. Some people are just born failures at love. It's not their fault. It's genetics, like being short or having brown eyes. Garrett got the failure gene. At least now he knows. The room went silent, except for ice clinking in a glass. 40 family members had just watched my father call me a genetic failure, and not one person defended me. No one stood up. They sat, some agreeing, some embarrassed, but all compliant. Hazel squeezed my hand 3 times. Our private signal for I love you. Then she stood up, 4 feet tall in a purple butterfly dress and light-up sneakers, and cleared her throat. Everyone turned, probably expecting tears or for me to take her and leave. They had no idea what she planned. I was already halfway to standing, ready to walk out with Hazel. My keys were in my pocket, the car outside. I could have ended this in 30 seconds, but Hazel tugged my sleeve with surprising urgency. "Daddy, wait," she whispered, calm and insistent. "Trust me." There was a determination in her I'd seen before when she worked a tough puzzle or learned a new soccer move. This wasn't a child asking for permission. This was Hazel with a plan. As she smoothed her dress, stood tall, and commanded the room's attention simply by being steady. "Grandma Veronica," she said, clear and deliberate, "I made something special for Grandpa Dennis. Can I show it to everyone?" Veronica's triumphant smile flickered into a condescending one. That fake grandmotherly expression she used when she wanted to seem kind but actually patronized. "Oh, sweetie, maybe later," she replied, leaning forward as adults do when they mean to be kind but are being dismissive. "The adults are talking about important things. Why don't you go play with your tablet in the other room?" Hazel didn't budge. "But it's about love and marriage," she insisted. "You were just talking about that for the last hour. I've been working on this project for weeks. It's for school, but I think Grandpa Dennis needs to see it now." My father looked up from his beer. A flicker of interest crossed his face. "What kind of project, Princess?" Veronica scoffed. "It's about family dynamics," Hazel replied, using the classroom phrase. "Mrs. Henderson said we should document how families work, how they support each other through change. It helps us understand relationships better." Veronica's laugh was thin and dismissive. "That's very nice, dear, but this isn't the time for school projects. We're having an adult conversation about your father's situation." "My father's situation is part of family dynamics," Hazel answered, precise and calm. "Mrs. Henderson said divorce affects everyone in a family, not just the people getting divorced. Children's perspectives matter too." Trent, who'd always had a soft spot for Hazel, finally intervened. "Come on, Veronica, let the kids share. Might lift the mood." Melody agreed immediately, probably seeing a way to interrupt Veronica's running commentary. "If Hazel put work into this, we should see it." With others backing Hazel, Veronica couldn't decline without looking cold. She waved a hand, the diamonds on her rings flashing. "Fine, dear," she said, settling back like a queen, granting an audience. "What is it? A drawing? A poem? An essay about families?" Hazel stepped to the center of the room, tablet pressed to her chest. "It's a video project," she said. "Mrs. Henderson taught us about documentation and primary sources. The best way to understand something is to observe it directly." She moved to the entertainment center, found the right cable, plugged in and navigated to her files faster than most adults would. "My project is about truth in families," she announced. "Mrs. Henderson says sometimes people say one thing, but mean another. She calls that subtext. To understand our families, we have to pay attention to what people say when they think no one's listening." Veronica's face flickered for a moment, before she recovered. "That sounds educational. I'm sure your teacher will be impressed." "I already was," Hazel replied simply. "I got an A+ and a commendation for thorough research." My father set down his beer, suddenly alert. The room shifted. Even the relatives who'd been glued to their phones straightened. "The video is 8 minutes," Hazel said, her finger hovering above play. "But everyone should watch it. especially Grandpa Dennis. It's about love and family and the difference between what people say in public and what they think. She pressed play. Shaky, low-angle footage filled the screen. Timestamps from weeks earlier. Veronica's voice, stripped of her public sweetness, came through sharp and unmistakable. The relatives who'd been comfortable dissecting my life were about to see a different picture. The first clip, timestamped 3 weeks earlier, at 7:43 p.m., captured Veronica behind the kitchen counter. "I swear to God, Dennis, if you bring up that pathetic son of yours one more time at dinner, I'm done. The man's a walking disappointment, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." My father's reply was weak. "Ronnie, please, he's having a hard time with the divorce." Veronica answered coldly, "Face it, Dennis, you raised a loser, accept it and we'll all be better off." The video cut. 2 weeks earlier, 2:15 p.m., Veronica, on the phone in the living room. "The divorce is final," she told Marge. "I give Garrett 2 months before he's crying himself to sleep in Dennis's basement, hugging that ratty sweatshirt. Some men aren't meant to succeed." 1 week ago, 11:30 a.m., Veronica and a friend in the kitchen, coffee cups clinking. "The best part is watching Dennis finally realize his son is exactly like his deadbeat brother. Genetic failure. My kids went to Stanford and Yale. Dennis's kids, community college. The family tree says it all." Laughter followed. The clips kept coming, each worse than the last. Veronica telling her book club I was sexually inadequate while they laughed. A garden chat with her sister mocking my confidence and the way I walked. A FaceTime where she called Hazel weird and implied the next generation was tainted by the same failure. I felt my fists clench hearing her insult my daughter. Relatives shifted uneasily, some covering their mouths, others frozen. My father's color changed from pale to red. The footage didn't stop. 3 days ago, 4:47 p.m., Veronica bragged on the phone about Trevor. Half his age, twice the man, clearly reveling in the affair. Yesterday, 3:22 p.m. in the garage, Veronica discussed a prenup loophole with a voice that left no doubt about her intent. If Dennis died before their 10th anniversary, she'd get everything. 3 more years, she said. I can play the devoted wife while Trevor keeps me satisfied. When the clip ended, the room was silent except for the sound of Veronica's champagne glass hitting the hardwood and shattering. Hazel unplugged her tablet calmly, deliberate and composed. She looked at Veronica, then at my father, then at the stunned relatives. "My teacher said documentation helps us understand family dynamics," she said. "We should observe carefully and record accurately." I got an A+ for thoroughness. My father rose slowly, his contractor's hands shaking. He'd finally noticed the Tuesday and Thursday patterns. Veronica sputtered, accusing the child of editing and manipulation. Hazel's response, so straightforward it almost sounded like innocence, was a weapon. "Did I? Grandma, should I show the other videos? The parking lot at the gym? Mr. Trevor's blue Mercedes with the license plate HOTTRE? I have clear footage of you in that car." The room erupted. Aunt Ruth grabbed her purse and left muttering about disgrace. Uncle Pete suddenly found his shoes fascinating. Cousins split between recording on their phones and trying to disappear into the couch. Jerome started a slow clap until his mother smacked his arm. Veronica turned on Hazel with venom, calling her a sneaky brat and accusing her of stalking. I stood up, protective and furious. "Don't you dare speak to my daughter that way," I said. "Not ever." Veronica shrieked, but my father, quiet until that moment, said no. It was the tone of a man who'd had enough of shoddy work. "You did that yourself. Every word, every action, every Tuesday and Thursday. Get out of my house." Veronica shifted from denial to pleading. "Couples therapy, we can work this out." But Dad's next words shook the room. "You have 10 minutes to pack what you can carry. Everything else gets shipped to whatever bridge you crawl under." Veronica grabbed her purse, shot one last venomous look at Hazel and me, and stormed upstairs. "You'll hear from my lawyer," she screamed over her shoulder. "Looking forward to it," Dad called back. "I'm sure he'll love seeing these videos in court." The party dispersed. Relatives mumbled excuses and apologies as they fled. Melody hugged me and whispered, "Your daughter is my hero," then shepherded her husband toward the door. Trent stayed to help clean up the shattered glass. Later that night, after the house emptied and the dishes were done, I tucked Hazel into the guest room. Professor Sparkles, her stuffed unicorn, sat beside her. "How long have you been recording her?" I asked, sitting on the bed. "Since the day Mom and you told me about the divorce," she answered matter-of-factly. "Veronica said mean things when she thought I wasn't listening. She called you pathetic while I did homework. She laughed about you with her friends while I read in the living room." I asked why she hadn't said anything sooner. She hugged Professor Sparkles tighter. "You always say actions have consequences, Daddy. You tell me to let people show us who they are." I wanted her actions to have real consequences. My father knocked and stepped into the doorway. His eyes were red-rimmed but clearer than I'd seen in years. "Can I come in?" he asked. Hazel patted the bed and he sat heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. "Garrett, I'm sorry," he said, voice thick. "I should have defended you tonight and before. I should have seen what she was doing to our family." I told him he didn't have to apologize. He kept talking. "You're not a failure. You never were. You handled things with grace and dignity. You're a good father, a good man, better than I was. I failed by not seeing what was happening under my roof. I let her poison what your mother and I built." He looked at Hazel with something like awe. "And you, young lady, are brilliant. Terrifying, but brilliant. Where did you learn that?" Hazel smiled for the first time that night. "YouTube tutorials on investigative journalism," she said. "And Mrs. Henderson showed us how documentarians work. The camera doesn't lie, it just shows what's there." "Remind me to send Mrs. Henderson a very nice Christmas gift," Dad said. 2 months later. Dad's divorce was final. Veronica tried to fight it, but Hazel had backed up the videos to 3 different cloud services. Her lawyer advised a quick settlement. Veronica moved in with Trevor, a relationship that lasted 3 weeks before she was kicked out for cheating with his best friend. Last I heard, she was staying with her sister in Phoenix, blaming a midlife crisis for the mess. Dennis started therapy and admitted he had work to do. He began dating carefully and met a kind woman named Carol through the grief group, the same place he'd met Veronica. "She doesn't hate my kids," he said with a small smile. "Already an improvement. I found an apartment 6 blocks from Dad, a 2-bedroom with a backyard for Hazel's soccer practice. Brooke and I remained amicable co-parents." She laughed when she heard about Veronica's downfall. "Your daughter will change the world someday," she said. "God help anyone who stands in her way." Hazel's tablet still sits on her dresser, though she's moved on to other projects. She started a video series about family rebuilding for her 4th grade presentation, this time filming with permission. She interviewed Dad about starting over at 58, me about co-parenting, and even got Melody and Trent to talk about supporting family through hard times. Yesterday I watched her teach Dad chess. She'd beaten him 3 times in a row, and he was beaming. "You know what?" he said, studying the board. "I think the women in this family are the smart ones. Your grandmother would have loved you." Hazel asked about me. Dennis ruffled her hair. "Your dad's smart enough to raise you. That makes him the smartest of all. He knew when to let go of what wasn't working, and hold tight to what matters." I stood in the doorway thinking about failure and success, marriages that end and families that endure. Veronica had been wrong about everything, especially about one idea: people aren't born failures at love. Some are simply brave enough to admit when something isn't working, and wise enough to protect what matters. Often the biggest victories come from the smallest warriors. My 8-year-old taught me that standing up for yourself isn't always shouting or fighting back physically. Sometimes it means pressing record at the right moment, and pressing play at an even better one. Family isn't measured by perfect marriages or public approval. It's about showing up, standing up, and occasionally, having an 8-year-old with a tablet who loves you enough to fight for your honor in her own clear, fearless way. The truth doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it only needs to be documented and presented at the right time. If this story resonated, Share a memory in the comments below about being judged by family or finding strength in unexpected places. Like the video if you believe actions have consequences, and small voices can speak the loudest truths. Share it with someone who needs to remember their worth isn't defined by others. Subscribe for more stories about families facing hard truths, finding unexpected heroes, and rebuilding stronger. Thanks for watching. Remember, sometimes the best defense is an 8-year-old with a tablet and a sense of justice.